Go and open your pantry, and somewhere near the back you'll see a can with a faded label you can barely read anymore, and a bag of something dried with the corner rolled and clipped so long ago you don't remember doing it. You're never going to cook with either of them, and you won't throw them out either, because that means admitting you wasted the money. So they just sit there. Japanese households don't have this problem, and it's not because their kitchens are bigger. It's the exact opposite. Most Japanese homes don't have a walk-in pantry at all. They have one narrow cupboard or a set of shallow drawers that they keep organized, and everything gets used, and their pantry never turns into a mess. There are 12 pantry habits behind this, and they're the reason one small Japanese cupboard puts a large American pantry to shame. Learn them, and your kitchen finally starts working the way you always wanted it to, and you'll stop wasting food. By the end of this video, your pantry will actually start saving you money and cut your cooking time in half. And number 9 is the habit that makes some of your food taste better after months on the shelf than it did the day you bought it, which sounds impossible until you see why it works. The first habit is one of the most important ones, and it is the backbone of an organized Japanese pantry. In most American kitchens, the pantry is full of packaging. There's a red cereal box on one shelf, a blue pasta bag on another, a bag of flour half rolled and pinched shut with a chip clip, 3 different bottles of sauce with the labels turned different directions, and behind all of that, food you can't see. A Japanese family does the exact opposite. The moment food enters the pantry, it comes out of its packaging and goes straight into a clear glass jar with a tight, airtight lid. Rice, flour, pasta, oats, lentils, cereal, coffee, sugar, dried mushrooms, all of it is decanted, labeled, and placed with the contents facing forward. Their pantry has almost no packaging in it at all. The reason this one change makes such a difference is that boxes and bags hide what's inside them. You glance at the shelf, see a stack of packaging, and assume you're running low on flour, so you grab another bag at the store, and that's how you end up with 3 of them sitting in the same cupboard. On top of that, everything stays fresh far longer, because a cardboard box or a rolled up bag with a chip clip is not airtight, and dry goods go stale, soft, or dull within weeks. There's also the pantry moth problem, which is more common in American kitchens than most people realize, and those moths almost never fly in from outside. They arrive as eggs already sitting inside the flour or rice you bought at the store, and a sealed glass jar keeps anything that hatches contained, so one bad bag doesn't take out your whole pantry. And the last reason is the one nobody talks about, which is that a wall of matching jars is genuinely more pleasant to open than a wall of screaming packaging, so you actually want to use what's in it. Once you can see everything you own, the only thing left is arranging it in a way that matches how you actually cook. And this is where nearly every American pantry has been organized wrong from the very beginning. Habit number 2 is the one that changes how you actually use your pantry, and it turns a storage cupboard into a working kitchen. Take a look at how your pantry is arranged right now, because there's a good chance it mirrors a grocery store aisle. All the canned goods live on one shelf, all the pasta on another, all the baking supplies together, all the sauces together, all the snacks in a bin. This feels sensible because it looks like the store you bought them from, but the store is arranged that way for the store's convenience, not for yours. The Japanese arrange their pantry by the meal they're going to make, not by the type of ingredient. There's a soup zone with the miso, the dashi stock, and the dried seaweed all sitting together. There's a rice bowl zone with the rice, the sesame, and the toppings in one place. There's a noodle zone with the noodles, the sauce, and the dried mushrooms in another. Each zone is a small self-contained kit, and each shelf becomes one meal. The reason this works so well is that you don't cook by category, you cook by meal. When you're making pasta on a Tuesday night, you don't need all the sauces. You need one specific sauce, plus the pasta, plus the Parmesan, plus the crushed red pepper. And those 4 things live on 4 different shelves in a typical American pantry. So every meal becomes a small treasure hunt. Treasure hunts at 6 o'clock are how cooking ends up being stressful. Zoning by meal removes all of that friction because you pull one shelf and you cook one meal, and the decisions have already been made for you. Once your pantry is zoned this way, the only thing that can break it is what you do with the groceries the moment you walk through the door. The third habit is about the first 30 minutes after you get home from grocery shopping, because that's the window that decides whether your pantry stays organized or falls apart by the end of the week. The way most of us do it is that you come home with the bags, you shove them into the pantry, still tied up in plastic, and you tell yourself you'll sort it out later. Later never really comes. The bags sit on the pantry floor for a week, then 2 weeks, and eventually they just become the pantry. In Japan, the shopping bag doesn't enter the cupboard at all. Everything is unpacked at the counter within about 30 minutes of walking in the door, the dry goods poured into their waiting jars, the perishables placed into their zones, the dates written on the lids, and the empty bag goes back to the front door before you sit down. What lives in the pantry is only ever food in its home, never groceries stuck halfway between the car and the cupboard. The reason the 30-minute window matters so much is that you already have the momentum of the shop at that point. You're already standing in the kitchen, the counter is already going to need wiping down, so the effort is basically free. Any longer than that, and the task becomes a brand new chore competing with the rest of your evening, and it will lose every single time. And this idea of doing things at the right moment is only one small piece of a much bigger tradition. Japanese families have hundreds of habits like these that they've used for generations to keep their food, their kitchens, and their spending in good order. I've pulled all of them together into a book, and it's over at thejapanesemethod.com. Scan the QR code on the screen or click the link in the description to get your copy and start transforming your house and kitchen today. Processing your groceries on arrival keeps everything in the right place the first time you bring it home. But there's one more small rule for what to do every time after that, when you're bringing home more of something you already own. The fourth habit is the shortest one in the whole video, because it's almost embarrassingly simple. Older items always move to the front, and new items always go in behind them. When you bring home a fresh jar of soy sauce, the one you already have slides forward, and the new one goes behind it. Same with the bag of rice, the tin of tuna, the box of tea. Every time. This keeps your food constantly rotating forward instead of settling into layers. And layers are exactly how you ended up with that mystery can from the very start of this video. That can exist because nothing behind it ever got pulled to the front. Once the food is always rotating, nothing gets the chance to sink to the back and turn into an archaeological dig. Everything so far has been about keeping the pantry usable. The next habit is where the pantry actually starts saving you from ordering takeout on a weeknight. The fifth habit is about the exact moment most of us give up on cooking a real dinner. The real reason you order takeout on a Tuesday night isn't that you're lazy, and I want you to let yourself off the hook on that. The truth is that dinner requires half a dozen small decisions on top of the cooking itself, and the biggest of those decisions is what will actually make it taste like something. So the Japanese solution is to keep a small shelf of homemade sauces on standing rotation, made once in a calm session on the weekend, and then kept in labeled jars ready to turn any protein or vegetable into a finished meal in a single step. There's a ponzu, a mentsuyu, a gomadare, a tare, a dashi base, 5 to 8 of them at any given time, each one waiting on the shelf and each one capable of carrying a meal on its own. On a Tuesday, dinner becomes a hot pan, a piece of protein, a handful of vegetables, and 1 spoon out of 1 jar, and the whole thing is on the table in 15 minutes. Your pantry, on the other hand, has 40 half-used bottles of sauces bought for 1 recipe each and never opened again, so you have infinite flavor choices and no working system for reaching any of them. You were never really beaten by the cooking itself. You were beaten by the small pile of invisible decisions sitting in front of it, and pre-made sauces remove that pile before you ever walk into the kitchen. Pre-made sauces solve the flavor half of dinner, but the next habit goes even further, because some of what lives in a Japanese pantry is already most of a finished meal on its own. The sixth habit turns certain shelves of the pantry into something closer to a safety net than a supply cache. A Japanese pantry always keeps a small stash of items that are engineered to be the meal with almost nothing added. A packet of dashi and a spoon of miso is soup in 3 minutes. A bowl of rice with furikake and a strip of nori is a lunch. A tin of good quality tuna, a jar of pickles, and some rice is a full meal in 5 minutes. A pack of noodles with an egg and a handful of chopped green onion is dinner. None of these things needs a recipe, and none of them needs any real energy from you, because the meal is already built into the ingredient. This is what makes a Japanese pantry feel bottomless, even when it's physically small. There's always a floor beneath which the pantry cannot fall, and the answer to what's for dinner is never nothing. Your pantry, by contrast, is full of ingredients that require recipes that require energy you don't have on a Wednesday. Theirs is full of meals disguised as ingredients, which is a completely different thing. Once you've stocked a shelf like this, dinner becomes a lot easier to make. But those one-step meals are only possible because of one deeper idea about what a pantry is even for. And it's the single most important idea in this entire video. The seventh habit is the one I most want you to hear. Your pantry stores ingredients. The Japanese pantry stores meals in waiting. Think about what actually lives in a typical American pantry right now. It's a collection. Flour, sugar, canned tomatoes, a random bag of quinoa, 3 different kinds of pasta, 12 spices, 4 vinegars. All of it is raw material that still requires you to decide, to plan, to assemble, to summon the energy you don't have at 6 o'clock in the evening. A Japanese pantry looks completely different because it's full of dashi packets already portioned for soup, miso ready to go, pre-made sauces from the last habit, rice measured out into single meals, and dried mushrooms sitting ready to soak. Every single thing in there is 30 seconds from becoming a component of tonight's dinner. Nothing on the shelf is a raw ingredient waiting for a plan. Everything is a meal already half decided. That one difference changes what a pantry is even for. You stop opening it and asking, "What have I got?" which is the question that leads straight to the takeout app on your phone. You start opening it and asking what's ready to become dinner tonight, which is a question with an answer already built into the shelves. Cooking is no longer something you start from scratch. It becomes something you assemble from pieces that are already halfway there, and that shift changes how you feel about the entire kitchen. When you see your pantry this way, it changes how you shop, how you cook, and how you spend your Sunday afternoons, beginning with a small habit that pays you back for weeks. The 8th habit is the simplest one in the whole video, and it's how you actually build up that shelf of meals in waiting without turning it into a weekend project. Any recurring pantry task either becomes a one-time batch job or it becomes a small, wasteful chore you do badly over and over forever. Rice gets portioned into single meal jars for the whole month in one Sunday hour. A house spice blend gets mixed once, jarred, and used for 3 months of cooking. A batch of ponzu is made once and used for the whole quarter. Snack jars get filled once on a Sunday, so nobody's ripping open packets at 4 in the afternoon. The reason this works so well is that you do the work in one calm session where the effort is efficient, and then you draw from it in tiny, frictionless moments for weeks afterward. Compare that to portioning rice one meal at a time, which is the exact same total work stretched across 30 separate irritations spread over a month. Batching handles the work side of your pantry, but the next habit handles the surprising side, because some pantry foods aren't just surviving on the shelf. They're actively getting better while they sit there. The 9th habit is the one that flips your expectations completely on their head, and it lands right at the point where you might be tempted to drift off. So do stay with me, because this is the fun one. A surprising number of pantry staples don't just tolerate age, they actively improve with it. Miso is the headline example. A jar of miso deepens for a year or more on the shelf, and a 2-year-old miso is rounder, more complex, and far more savory than a 3-month-old one, because the fermentation keeps working the whole time it's sitting there. Soy sauce mellows and gains depth over months if it stays unopened. Kombu, the dried kelp that makes dashi, actually concentrates its glutamates the longer it dries, so aged kombu is genuinely prized. Dried shiitake mushrooms intensify to the point that they become one of the strongest natural sources of umami in any kitchen anywhere. Umeboshi, which are salt-cured plums, are traditionally aged for years and considered better and even more medicinal the older they get. Even white rice has an aged tradition in Japan called koshu, which is deliberately aged rice that cooks up firmer and holds sauce far better than the fresh version. So the pantry here isn't just a holding space where food waits to slowly die. For certain ingredients, it's an active transformation chamber, and that changes what old even means when you're standing in front of a Japanese shelf. And the ingredients that improve most on the shelf tend to be the same ingredients that are cheapest at a very specific moment in the year, which leads perfectly into the next habit. The 10th habit is where paying attention to the calendar finally starts paying you back. The Japanese pantry follows the calendar of what's genuinely in season, not the calendar of supermarket promotions. Umeboshi is made in June when the plums are at their cheapest and most flavorful. Tsukemono pickles are put up through summer at the peak of the vegetables. Persimmons are dried in autumn. Sesame is bought at the harvest. In every single case, the pantry is being stocked at the exact moment the ingredient is both cheapest and best, and then it holds that quality for months afterward. The Western version of this is jam in strawberry season, pickles at cucumber glut, and tomatoes canned in September for pasta sauce in February. The recipes aren't really the point. The rhythm is. Out-of-season ingredients on the shelf cost 2 or 3 times what they cost in season, and they taste worse because they've traveled halfway around the world to reach you. If you stock at the peak and preserve, you get to eat July food in the middle of January at July prices. You've now got a pantry full of food that's stored right, zoned right, and bought right, and almost everyone still manages to waste half of it because they never look at any of it until it's already too late. The 11th habit closes the loop this whole video has left open because I've spent 10 habits telling you how to put food into the pantry and almost nothing about how to get it out. Once a week, ideally at the same time, and Sunday morning is common, you spend about 5 minutes looking at the entire pantry and writing next week's dinners out of what's already in there. The Japanese call this tanaroshi, which literally means taking things off the shelf, and it's the same word Japanese businesses use for stock taking. They treat it as a small, calm ritual rather than a chore. The way it actually works is that you open the pantry, you look, and you see the jar of dried mushrooms getting low, the miso that's been open a while, the last of the ponzu, and the rice you portioned 3 weeks ago. From that, you write 4 dinners for the coming week that use what's already sitting on the shelves. Then you shop only for what's missing, and nothing more. This one habit does more to cut your grocery bill than anything else in this video because it stops the supermarket from setting your menu. Your pantry does. You stop buying things you already own, and you start finishing things you already bought, which leaves the final habit, and it's the one that all 11 others have been building toward the whole time. The 12th habit sounds like the opposite of everything I've just told you, and that is exactly the point. Never stock more than you can actually see. If a jar is hiding behind another jar, or a can is buried behind another can, it doesn't exist, and pretending otherwise is how the pantry falls apart. The goal was never a fuller pantry. The goal is a visible one, and a pantry crammed to the door with duplicates and unopened bags isn't organized. It's the mystery can from the very start of this video, wearing the costume of preparation. Every single habit in this video has been about the same underlying idea, which is designing for getting out of the system entirely. Clear jars, meal zones, 30-minute processing, front-to-back rotation, signature sauces, one-step staples, meals in waiting, one-time batching, foods that improve, seasonal stocking, and the weekly tanaroshi all do one single thing when you put them together. They make sure the food stays visible, stays used, and never becomes that jar of something at the back of the top shelf. You cannot forget what you can see, and you will always forget what you can't. There's a Japanese word for all of this, and it's tier. It literally means to put one's hand in, and it's used for the ongoing attentive care of something so it stays in good working order. It's the word Japanese speakers use for a garden, a knife, a piece of skin, a set of tools, and it doesn't mean a one-time act. It means the small daily discipline of tiny adjustments over time. A Japanese knife lasts 50 years because someone did tear on it, and a Japanese pantry works forever for exactly the same reason. That jar at the back of your top shelf existed because nobody was ever doing tear to the pantry as a whole. It was left to run itself. It filled with things that were forgotten the moment they went in. Tear isn't really about effort. It's about attention. And attention is something you can give in 5 minutes on a Sunday morning without ever calling it work. You don't need to attempt all 12 of these this weekend. And I'd honestly rather you didn't even try, because turning your whole kitchen into one enormous Saturday project is exactly the trap this entire approach is designed to help you avoid. Start with one single habit. Move your rice and your flour into clear jars so you can finally see them. Or spend 5 minutes on Sunday morning looking at what's actually on your shelves, and then just notice how it slowly changes what ends up on your dinner plate a month from now. Your pantry was never really the problem, and your willpower was never the problem either. It just needed tier. Let me know in the comments what habits you're going to try out, and tell me about your pantry. What do you like stocking up on? Now that's it from me. Thanks a lot for watching. And if this was useful to you, share it with someone who could really use it, hit subscribe so you catch the next one, and click the video appearing on your screen for more. Until next time.